the three-part symphony is, I think this is certainly the biggest and the most demanding. I wouldn't recommend that this be the first three-part invention that you do. In fact, I learned this a few months ago. This is not something that I've had in my repertoire all my life. And the reason I played that is because it embodies everything that I want to talk about in what we teach. And for that, I believe that there were three great teachers in our compositional arsenal. Bach, the greatest. Bartók, with the Mikrokosmos, the Note Music for Children. And the music I'd like to look at today, four short pieces that you all know by Schumann. So, let me play the first one of these. And even though this is, oh, so I have to remember where the music is before I look at what the music is. Even though this is early, beginning to early intermediate, it's been a long, long time since I have consulted. And two of these pieces, by the way, are new. I've never learned them. You'll be surprised. And I want to talk to you about what I think there is to teach. From the Opus 68, the 43 Klavierstücke. It's got the Soldier's March and the Happy Farmer. You know, these pieces that we all know and love, and they're wonderful, wonderful pieces. Do not include the scenes from childhood in this kind of repertoire. You all know that. But I've come across people, and I've judged competitions where a little 9-year-old sits down and plays the opening of the Kindersingen, and I haven't learned that yet. I'm waiting until I'm old enough to be young enough. But here's the first one, and I have a little story to tell you about this. Pretty obvious, the title. What does the title mean? The Soldier's March. Well, back in 1848, I don't remember exactly when these were written, 1848. Back then, soldiers wore uniforms, and I don't know whether you saw them in the street or not, and there was a militaristic, mean demeanor to them. And little kids might have seen that. And whether it was something that they looked forward to doing or not, it was something that could capture the imagination of a young person. It's a little different today. I don't know how a piece called Soldier's March, and it's marked kind of heavy and strong. So know the meaning of the title. Know what you're trying to play. But the most important thing that you can teach in this is rhythm. Now, I want to tell you, when I was a little kid, I picked this up by ear. My teacher never assigned this piece to me. And I want to play it for you the way I heard it, and I heard it until I looked at this piece just about 3 weeks ago. a measure, and I never could quite figure out why that measure just seemed like it was tacked on. Until I looked at the score. And I saw that the downbeat was I was 72 years old when I discovered that. So rhythm is so very important. Now, I don't know whether part of your pedagogy, I don't want to get into how, but I remember with pieces like this being told to clap. I don't remember whether I was actually told to march around a room to something, or I certainly wasn't asked to waltz if I played a 3/4 piece, but to make some kind of body motion that integrates the sound with your own feeling. I think this is a perfect piece. There's also a little thing at the end. And I didn't do it very well. Quarter note. He changes the notation, and he also gives a leap. We're going to get into that a little bit more. So put that on the back burner for a second, because I want to talk about difficult passages in pieces. So. Got to practice that jump from here to here. Okay, we'll talk about that a little bit more. The next piece, Trillerliedchen. Anybody other than a kid who has come from a German-speaking country have a student that knows what that might mean? It's translated elsewhere, but I didn't really know what it meant. First thing I did was to look it up. It's a humming song. I think it's so important to be able to instill in a young student music that requires them to look up the meanings of words. I've said this to this group and others before. When I was a student, if I brought in a piece of music to Mr. Rave, and I couldn't really play it very well, he was very tolerant the first time, even the second time. The third time he was not. But the first time, but if I didn't know the meaning of my stoso, fireworks, I only had that lesson taught me once. Didn't need it twice. You look up the meaning of the word, and the young person needs to have a dictionary and needs to get into the habit of looking up the meaning. So here's a little piece. I've never, the fact that these are pieces I didn't come across when I was a kid is not terribly important, but everyone knows this one. But there are several like that. Here's the humming song. Simple. We all have to do this. But it's amazing how many times at the university level I have heard students who have more sounded played the right notes, notes once I got started. I played the right notes. Back to Bach. I'm going to suggest to you that there are 3 levels of sound in this little piece. Here's the dominant level. Here's the secondary level. I wouldn't want this in this piece. I might, in some more complicated piece, want to bring out another voice. But I want this. And here's the third voice, the ostinato. I'm playing 3 different levels of sound, right? Whether I'm doing it well or not is up to you and your methodology to help me do it better. But that's what I need to do. 3 levels of sound. You see why I started with a 3-part? 3 levels of sound. Now, hopefully somebody is thinking, yeah, but a harpsichord, you can't do that. But you can do it with articulation. And this is where this music gets far more complicated than you're likely to teach to a late beginner or early intermediate. But if you noticed, I attempted to give different articulation to all 3 voices. And I consider that opening sound to be the main thing we hear. So I phrase that. Up, phrase it. Up, phrase it. My addition, and I hope you all are at least familiar, that's it, with what I consider to be outstanding editing in Alfred, Willard Palmer. His suggestions are this. All legato. That's fine. But the problem with this particular sinfonia is the episodic material, where we don't have the entire theme stated, is the opening, the head of the main subject. I need the music for it, I just not. Very well. Here. The episodic material is this. Very often it talks about you hear the opening of that? But I don't want you to think that that's the subject. So that I play phrase, all under one roof. And that's different from, so you hear the articulation tells you where the subject, the main subject as I hear it, is. Then you've got this, the other parts play themselves. The faster notes. And then you have the falling bass line, the Dido and Aeneas chromatic line, which is very distinctive. But you have to show the voicing of the subject when it's a subject, and color it differently when it's episodic. Okay, that's higher mathematics, and it's really difficult. If I were to play this in a public recital, I would have to practice it a lot more than I was doing for today's program. I'm sorry to say, I wasn't disrespecting you, but I was kind of busy before this. Listening to what you're doing. And it's really hard for a young person to listen the way we need to be able to listen in order to play convincingly. It's very hard to do. How many of you, when you were students, heard your teacher say, listen to what you're doing? I'll bet all of you did. I bet all of you have said this to your students. Fine, yeah, I hear it. I hear it. Yeah. I mean, I hear it. I hear it. What do you want? What to listen for and how to produce it in music that is possible for a young person to accomplish those goals. That's the what. That's why I'm picking these pieces. We could do the same talk with the Schumann Fantasy. We could do the same talk with the Tchaikovsky Concerto. But all of us, and I am not exempt from this, when I went back and I said, you know, I really like to use the F minor Sinfonia, and I haven't